What I'm trying to say is like, what happens when those fail?
Mm-hmm.
You can't see God. He's veiled. And all the wisdom of your day has then become like a desert.
A family meal, like you have to give up your idiosyncrasy to be able to commune with everybody else or a sports team or whatever. And so the mythological image in some ways it's like you're formulating the pattern itself, saying this is how the world works. Here's a limit version of it.
So I want to make sure I'm getting, because I think this is a crucial point.
Yeah.
Sorry. So what I'm hearing you saying is, so this imagery is obviously imaginal. It's helping you to become aware of things you're not typically every day aware of. And that awareness is sort of like
I told them this already. I thought that was the best conversation I've ever seen these two have. And I've watched all of them online that you two have done, and I've watched them closely. There was so much that you two touched on.
I don't even know
so
what
much you worked through, and actually
because
funny
watching this was it was frustrating for me because I felt like they should be talking about Job here, and no one's even mentioning that book.
Yeah, because nobody will touch it with a 10-foot pole.
Can you draw out Leviathan with a hook? Or snare his tongue with a line?
Yeah. But like even from the beginning, like they talk about being exiled and having to have reorientation.
This is something that my brother developed, by the way. If everybody probably knows about him, but I want to acknowledge that this idea came from him. He uses the trope of promised land and exile as a structure to understand the bigger meaning crisis. That there seems to be in the Bible a structure which is the place where you find your home, your identity, and communion, and then a place where that breaks, and all of a sudden things don't make sense. You're in the land of the foreigner, it's foreign gods, you can't have cohesion.
Still speaking, another also came.
Your sons and daughters were eating and drinking wine in their oldest brother's house, and suddenly a great wind came from across the wilderness and struck the four corners of the house, and it fell on the young people, and they are dead. And I alone have escaped to tell you.
Then Job arose, tore his robe.
Hi, this is Paul, and those of you who are longtime followers of this channel will recognize this guy. And I have been doing some talking about the hero's journey, about U-shaped story structure. And once I started talking about that, a whole bunch of OG randos said, oh, you got to come back and talk to Jess again about this because he's been talking about that on the randos channel. So
I do just want to start out with this short video. It's Kurt Vonnegut on the shape of stories.
Well, there's no reason why the simple shapes of stories can't be fed into computers. They are beautiful shapes. This is the GI axis, good fortune, ill fortune. Sickness and poverty down here, wealth and boisterous good health up there. Here's the very middle. Now, this is the BE axis. B stands for beginning. E stands for electricity. Now, this is an exercise in relativity, really. Is the shape of the curves of what matters and not their origins. So we'll start a little above average. Is why get a depressing person? We'll start the whole thing. We call this story Man in Hole, but it needn't be about a man, and it needn't be about somebody getting into a hole. But it's just a good way to remember it. Somebody gets into trouble, gets out of it again. People love that story. They never get sick of it.
Things don't make sense. You're in the land of the foreigner. It's foreign gods. You can't have cohesion. And what he does is he applies that to the whole problem. So the scientific development, the scientific revolution, the Enlightenment, scientism and that thinking is in some ways it's a moment of exile.
Mm-hmm. and like what the process of reorientation is.
Your brain is doing that, culture is doing that. And I think in Kairos, what you're just describing is exactly that. You go into the wilderness, you break the frame, so variation is now possible, and then that new variation gets drawn back into something. And it's the T.S. Eliot poem. We return to the center after all of our journeying, and we know it again for the first time. Like,
is what is the U-shaped journey doing? And I have three things that I think it's doing. The first thing is person making. I think the U-shaped journey makes persons. The second is that I think it's transformative. You know, you can see this as like a character moves along through the story. They come out different at the end. And we're actually mad when there's no character development and nothing happens to it. Or, you know, if nothing changes, then there's no story. So person making, transformative. And then the third thing, which I don't know if we'll even get to, depending on time, which is just world building, that weaving everything together. This would be how everything comes together in the end.
Right, when your very coherent worldview starts to shatter, things start to grow too much, and then they disconnect from the origin. But that also adds possibility.
Yes.
If you're ever capable of reconnecting them, then all of a sudden your capacity is so much more.
Indeed, the Lord gave Job twice as much as he had before. Then all his brothers, all his sisters, and all those who had been his acquaintances before came to him and ate food with him in his house. And they consoled him and comforted him for all the adversity that the Lord had brought upon him. Each one gave him a piece of silver, and each a ring of gold.
And how does God bring that about? Here's the question. How does God put Job in that place that you just described? How does he do that? Through pain and suffering.
Yeah.
Through pain and suffering.
suffering, people usually hear pain, distress when they hear the word suffering. That person is suffering. But that's not actually what the word means. To suffer means to undergo. It means to lose agency. Now, pain is a very powerful way of losing agency. Why? First of all, it's highly disruptive. And secondly, pain is associated usually with damage, and damage is a state in which we're often losing agency. So, right? Don't hear just pain. Instead, pay attention to this connection rather than this one. Most of the Buddha's metaphors are not pain metaphors, they're entrapment metaphors. Being fettered, losing your freedom, losing your agency.
Right. Okay. So it's in pain and suffering that you seek outside of the predictive frame. Vervaeke, I wrote down a phrase that he said.
Mm-hmm.
He said,
to move into a mode of orientation where you are trying to properly orient to the future, but not be in the predictive frame, it's radical. It goes to the fundamental guts of how the brain is working.
If I cry out concerning wrong, I am not heard. If I cry aloud, there is no justice. He has fenced up my way so that I cannot pass, and he has set darkness in my paths. He has stripped me of my glory and taken the crown from my head. He breaks me down on every side, and I am gone. My hope he has uprooted like a tree. He has also kindled his wrath against me, and he counts me as one of his enemies. His troops come together and build up their road.
And then, you know, how do you get through something like that, an exile period or some sort of transformational period where you don't know the outcome? Like,
I don't know what's going to happen, but I have an orientation, which is to say, or something like, I know that God wants the best of me. And the thing is that might mean that you're going to get dragged in the street and you're going to get killed and like all these horrible things are going to happen to you. But that mode of anticipation is the best mode to stand in order to face whatever horrible thing the future has in front of
Right.
you.
And then John Vervaeke comes back. He's like, well, you don't have to look towards God. You can look towards wisdom.
So, and then they say, well, what you do is you try and put your heart, you try to identify with what is good. Because if you are truly in relationship to what is good, you can't ultimately be disappointed. Mm-hmm. And then they say, well, what is it that's always good? Well, friendship? No. Friendship can turn bad. And can, wealth? No. Fame? And they rule. And then they say, what's the one thing that's always good? And their answer is wisdom. Mm-hmm. The cultivation of wisdom is always good. There's no situation in which the endeavor to become wiser can turns bad. Wisdom mm-hmm. is the good. And then that also allows them, because they also famously faced torture and execution with that.
And what's interesting in the book of Job is it's exactly those two things that are being dealt with. It's wisdom and God. So they're like right on the cusp of everything that's happening in the book, and they don't talk about it and they don't know about it, I guess.
No, they don't.
So what's
So the difference I would say between the Stoic and the Christian would be that in the Stoic it's like it's a virtue in the sense that it's a principle maybe.
Yeah.
Whereas in Christianity it's a person that you follow.
Mm-hmm. This is the whole idea of thrownness, right? Here I am. Suddenly I find myself in this world. I never asked to be born. I didn't choose mm-hmm. to come here, right? Mm-hmm. And so, and then this gets to George MacDonald's sermon on the book of Job.
Prometheus is more stonily patient than Job. Job is nothing of a stoic, but bemoans himself like a child, a brave child who seems to himself to suffer wrong, and recoils with horror-struck bewilderment from the unreason of the thing. Prometheus has to do with a tyrant whom he despises, before whom therefore he endures with unbewailing unsubmission, upheld by the consciousness that he is fighting the battle of humanity against an all but all-powerful selfishness. Endurance is the only availing weapon against him, and he will endure to the ever-delayed end. Job, on the other hand, is the more troubled, because it is he who is at the head and the heart, who is the beginning and the end of things, that has laid his hand upon Job with such a heavy torture that Job takes his flesh in his teeth for pain. Job cannot, will not believe God a tyrant, but while he pleads against his dealing with himself, loves God and looks to him as the source of life, the power and gladness of being. He dares not think God unjust, but not therefore can he allow that he has done anything to merit the treatment he is receiving at God's hands. Hence he is of necessity in profoundest perplexity, for how can the two things be reconciled? The thought has not yet come to him that which it would be unfair to lay upon him as punishment may yet be laid upon him as favor, by a love supreme which would give him blessing beyond all possible prayer, blessing he would not dare to ask if he saw the means necessary to its giving, but blessing for which, once known and understood, he would be willing to endure yet again all that he had undergone. Therefore is he sorely divided in himself. While he must not think God as having mistaken him, the discrepancy that looks like mistake forces itself upon him through every channel of thought and feeling.
That because of this, we can make a claim on God, and then he expresses how that is one of the highest displays or iterations or incarnations of faith, right?
The grandeur of the poem is that Job pleads his cause with God against all the remonstrance of religious authority, recognizing no one but God and justified therein. And the grandest of all is this, that he implies, if he does not actually say, that God owes something to his creature. This is the beginning of the greatest discovery of all, that God owes himself to the creature he has made in his image, for so he has made him incapable of living without him. This, his creature's highest claim upon him, is his divinest gift to them. For the fulfilling of this their claim, he has sent his Son, that he may himself, the Father of him and of us, follow into our hearts. Perhaps the worst thing in a theology constructed out of man's dull possible, and not out of the being and deeds and words of Jesus Christ, is the impression it conveys throughout that God acknowledges no such obligation. Are not we the clay, and he the potter? How can the clay claim from the potter? We are the clay, it is true, but his clay, but spiritual clay, live clay, with needs and desires and rights. We are clay, but clay worth the Son of God's dying for, that it might learn to consent to be shaped unto honor. We can have no merits. Merit is a thing impossible. But God has given us rights. Out of him we have nothing. But, created by him, come forth from him, we have even rights towards him. Ah, never, never against him. His whole desire and labor is to make us capable of claiming, and induce us to claim of him the things whose rights he bestowed in creating us. No claim had we to be created. That involves an absurdity. But, being made, we have claims on him who made us. Our needs are our claims. A man who will not provide for the hunger of his child is condemned by the whole world.
But, says the partisan of God, the Almighty stands in a relation far different from that of an earthly father. There is no parallel. I grant it. There is no parallel. The man did not create the child. He only yielded to an impulse created in himself. God is infinitely more bound to provide for his child than any man is to provide for his. The relation is infinitely, divinely closer. It is God to whom every hunger, every aspiration, every desire, every longing of our nature is to be referred. He made all our needs, made us the creatures of 1,000 necessities. And have we no claim on him? Nay, we have claims innumerable, infinite. And his one great claim on us is that we should claim our claims of him.
And so what's interesting about Job is he rues the day he was born, right? But he doesn't try to take his own life. That is all throughout the book. And he doesn't make it explicit, but it kind of hits you in the face. Why isn't this guy jumping off a cliff? Like,
right.
What keeps him alive? And what is keeping him alive is the fact that his existence is given to him by God. So he says that to his wife. He says, God gives, naked I came into the world and all that, right? And God gives and God takes away. And this is his stance.
If you were in a situation where someone's ripping your skin off, what would be the best stance to have? And the saints represent it as this, just look as high as possible, and that it doesn't make what's happening okay, but it's the best stance even in the worst situation.
Therefore I will not restrain my mouth. I will speak in the anguish of my spirit. I will complain in the bitterness of my soul. Am I a sea or a sea serpent that you set a guard over me? When I say my bed will comfort me, my couch will ease my complaint, then you scare me with dreams and terrify me with visions, so that my soul chooses strangling and death rather than my body. I loathe my life. I would not live forever. Let me alone, for my days are but a breath. What is man that you should exalt him, that you should set your heart on him, that you should visit him every morning and test him every moment? How long? Would you not look away from me and let me alone till I swallow my saliva? Have I sinned? What have I done to you, O watcher of men? Why have you set me as your target so that I am a burden to myself? Why then do you not pardon my transgression and take away my iniquity? But now I will lie down in the dust, and you will seek me diligently, but I will no longer be.
This is good.
Am I making it as extreme as possible by talking about people getting their skin ripped off?
You should. Because, look, no, if we're preparing for an open horizon, moving to extremity is the proper stance, the proper way to comport ourselves to what we're talking about.
And he doesn't try to escape it.
Mm-hmm.
Instead, he does something that I think a lot of people fail to do, myself included. He faces it head on, right?
Mm-hmm.
And the way that he does that is he makes a claim from the Creator. He asks God to put a context to his suffering, essentially.
I think a way in which we're gathering the logs so that the fire can spark is, and this is what I do in cognitive science, and what I'm trying to do even more broadly, trying to integrate with your work and a very respectful in Philia, right, and with David Schindler's work and Paul, and right, is to achieve that state of the broadest possible synoptic integration that could make available, I think, what you're talking about.
And that's exactly the book of Job. Okay, so that's what you're talking about. So
but Job is like unwillingly thrown into that situation. He's not going in a predictive mode, basically just because he can't. He doesn't have anything available to him.
Well, I don't know. I mean, maybe he could. Maybe he could be like.
And I'm thinking about at the very beginning of chapter 3, he doesn't have anything available. Because I think he discovers what you're talking about.
Yeah.
But that discovery process, he basically comes up against his friends who are making predictive claims. Job, God's reprimanding you. Your children sinned and he handed them over to their iniquity. Maybe Job, you sin. Maybe you're up to no good. Maybe there's secret things inside your heart God's trying to get to.
And this is why Job says, you're like a desert to me. Okay. I'm looking for an oasis. I'm looking for sustenance, and you're giving me nothing. Right. Because, and I've said this, I said this once to someone that because I was interrupting them, and they said, why you're not letting me talk? You're not letting me say what I want to say. And I said, because I know exactly what you're going to say next, and it's not interesting.
No.
Indeed. Who does not know such things as these?
Okay. It wasn't a great conversation, and I had to apologize for it. But this is exactly what Job is saying to his friends when he tells them that they're like a desert.
The caverns of Tema, look, the travelers of Sheba, hope for them. They are disappointed because they were confident. They come there and are confused. For now you are nothing. You see terror and are afraid.
Because he knows already what they're going to say. And so he is seriously orienting himself to the future, but not in that predictive frame. And that's where you can see it when he says that to his friends, right?
His friends come with the wisdom of the time. Like they're really trying to assist Job with the best that they have. Like how do you move forward?
Well, is that wisdom though? Like, this is the question I would ask. It's the wisdom of the time, right? Or it's the status quo.
Yeah, but that's
wisdom.
all we have. And
yeah, but I don't know, because when I think about wisdom, I think about Job 28, where when God describes
deeper wisdom. Surely there is a mine for silver and a place for gold to refine. Iron is taken out of the earth and copper is smelted from stone ore. Man puts an end to darkness by bringing in a light and searches out the farthest limit, rock buried in gloom and deep shadow. He breaks open shafts in a valley far away from anyone, in places forgotten by the foot. They dangle far away from men and swing to and fro. As for the earth, out of it comes bread, but underneath it is turned over as fire. Its stones are the bed of sapphires. It holds dust of gold. That deep path no bird of prey knows, and the falcon's eye has not seen it. The proud beasts have not trodden it. The lion has not passed over it. Man puts his hand to the flinty rock and overturns mountains by the roots. He cuts out channels in the rocks, and his eye sees every precious thing. He dams up the streams so they do not flow, and the thing that is hidden he brings out to light. But where shall wisdom be found? And where is the place of understanding? Man does not know its worth, and it is not found in the land of the living. The deep says, "It is not in me." The sea says, "It is not with me." It cannot be bought for gold, and silver cannot be weighed as its price. It cannot be valued in the gold of Ophir, in precious onyx or sapphire. Gold and crystal cannot equal it, nor can it be exchanged for jewels of fine gold. No mention shall be made of coral or of crystal. The price of wisdom is above pearls. The topaz of Ethiopia cannot equal it, nor can it be valued in pure gold. Where then does wisdom come? And where is the place of understanding? It is hidden from the eyes of all living, and concealed from the birds of the air. Destruction and death say, "We have heard a rumor of it with our ears." God understands the way to it, and he knows its place. For he sees the end of everything in the earth and sees everything under the heavens. When he gave the wind its weight and pressure and appointed the waters by measure, when he made a limit for the rain and a way for the thunderbolt, then he saw it and declared it. He established it and searched it out. And he said to man, "The awe of God is wisdom, and to depart from evil is understanding."
Of Christ. Like you're looking at the future, the eschatological future piercing in.
But not predictively. That's
no, not exactly, not predictively. It's typological. It's an image. It's man. It's the divine man. It's all that. And in some ways, that's what's drawing us further, like drawing us into itself.
So the thing about predictive is it gives you cognitive closure. That's why we seek it in science. And what you're talking about, this imaginal orientation, this eschatological, is it's orienting to you the future, but it's leaving space for real emergence, for real uncertainty, right?
Yeah.
Because no one knows the hour when. Right?
Then the Lord answered Job out of the whirlwind.
Who is this who darkens counsel by words without knowledge? Now prepare yourself like a man. I will question you, and you shall answer me. Where were you when I laid the foundations of the earth? Tell me, if you have understanding. Who determined its measurements? Surely you know. Or who stretched the line upon it? To what were its foundations fastened? Or who laid its cornerstone when the morning stars sang together and all the sons of God shouted for joy?
There's this parallel between the hiddenness of Job's integrity and the hiddenness of God's wisdom. And that's that deeper wisdom that's beyond the human wisdom. And so
Right.
like there's a hiddenness to that. Like we don't have access to it. Just like we don't have access to like what's inside each other's hearts.
Mhm.
And Job is seeking that. Like he's seeking that wisdom. Like it's that whole poem, the 28 poem of
Yeah.
going down into the dark places trying to find the thing of value. Like he's seeking that. So like it's a real, like Job is really trying to connect with God on some deep level. And you could say that was the point. That's what God wanted all along. Towards the end of, his speeches, he's fired up. He's defending himself with everything he's got. He's not holding back anything. And you get that same mirror image of God coming in and God defending his wisdom of all of creation, with that sort of fiery passion that Job does. And so there's this parallel between the integrity and wisdom of God and the integrity and wisdom of Job.
Yeah.
And well, I just love that.
They come into relationship with each other, right? This is why I think the best way to describe it is that Job realizes that he has a place, right? This is the prodigal son, that the prodigal son realizes that he is a son of the father, right? And that is the place that Job finds himself in after God's speech, right? That's why he says, I'm not going to say anything anymore because I've tried to speak of things that are too wonderful for me. Like there's something going on that Job obviously sees, because he says, I have heard of you, but now I have seen you. Right. And I mean, I'm just going to say he saw the fatherhood of God is what he saw.
I know that you can do everything, and that no purpose of yours can be withheld from you. You asked, who is this who hides counsel without knowledge? Therefore I have uttered what I did not understand, things too wonderful for me, which I did not know. Listen, please, and let me speak. You said, I will question you, and you shall answer me. I have heard of you by the hearing of the ear, but now my eye sees you. Therefore I abhor myself and repent in dust and ashes.
The prodigal son could have said the same thing. I have heard of you, but now I have seen you. At the end of the parable, right? Before he realized who he was, his father was just a guy that had money, right? And was able to give him his inheritance. And with that money, he could go do a bunch of stuff, right? So he had heard of him, right? I've heard of you. But when he returns and he gets, the party and the coat and the embrace and the place, now he is seen, right? Now he sees the father. Oh, now, right? Everything takes on a completely different perspective, I think.
And then on taking it up, I heard three things in you. I heard these three virtues: humility, trust, and hope. I want to start with the one that I have the most difficulty with. And I don't just mean philosophically, I mean personally, which is hope. And first of all, because there's two interpretations of Pandora's box. The standard interpretation is you let all the demons out, but there's this thing in the bottom, hope, right? And that oh yes, hope, right? That's sort of the standard. And then there's the Heideggerian interpretation is hope is the heaviest and worst thing in the box.
Yeah.
Right, and when you take up
it
hope,
makes all the others even more painful.
Yes, exactly. It's a burden.
Job doesn't do this without help. He sees all the reorientation is afforded, if you want to use John Vervaeke's language, to him by creation.
Right.
That's where he sees God.
Right. Yep.
right?
Yeah,
And
that's
that's
what I
where
get.
he sees the hope of resurrection.
Mhm.
That's where he sees
With the tree and the sprout, and then yeah.
life after death. And
Mhm.
he starts to see mercy is what he starts to see. He sees mercy. And his friends are talking about justice, right?
Yep.
Okay, you did this, and now this is happening to you. Get over it.
Mhm.
Say you're sorry, and let's get back to work, right?
Mhm.
And Job's like, no, wait a minute. I think that there's life after death. He's like space case, right?
For there is hope for a tree, if it is cut down, that it will sprout again, and that its tender shoots will not cease. Though its root may grow old in the earth, and its stump may die in the ground, yet at the scent of water it will bud and bring forth branches like a plant. But man dies and is laid away. Indeed, he breathes his last. And where is he? As water disappears from the sea and the river becomes parched and dries up, so man lies down and does not rise. Till the heavens are no more, they will not awake nor be roused from their sleep. Oh, that you would hide me in the grave, that you would conceal me until your wrath is past, that you would appoint me a set time and remember me. If a man dies, shall he live again? All the days of my hard service I will wait till my change comes. You shall call, and I will answer you. You shall desire the work of your hands.
And then he says, and one of my favorite parts is when he says, the wicked are not really suffering. You know, it's like, wait a minute.
Mhm.
No, they have fat cows, and they got lots of calves, and their children are
Mhm.
laughing and playing, and wait a
Mhm.
minute. Yeah.
Right.
So he starts to question the whole, if to keep it with the clip, predictive frame, right? He
Mhm.
that whole predictive frame just starts to crumble for him. And of course, when that happens, the friends just lose their
Yeah.
minds, right? Because
Because he's like, no, the wicked are prospering. What are you talking about, guys?
now he's breaking apart their worldview.
Yeah, but it's interesting. He does that apophatic thing again, because he first is like, I'm innocent. Why is this happening to me? And they're quickly like, Job, seriously, come on. And then, but he has to reverse it. He's like, not why do the innocent suffer, but why do the wicked prosper? And then it's that argument that gets the friends to shut up, because they can't answer that. And then even his when he does his confession at the end, it's not a confession of things that he's done. It's all the things he hasn't done. It's a negative confession. And then in that negative, I don't know, in that negative space, like God confesses of all the things he does.
Right.
And then that's all of creation.
That's interesting.
Yeah, it's
so Job creates like a negative space and God fills it up.
Something like that. Or it's even like they're mirror images, like, and they're coming together. Like it's like really like,
well, theosis.
Yeah, but it's an intimate scene. Like it really is.
Yeah, totally. That's the marriage supper, right? This is what marriage is. This is, yeah.
Well, like I was talking about with my dad about some of this, and my dad's like, I don't think God was really hidden from Job. I'm like, Dad, it says right here. He's like, yeah, I know. but like you go into the Song of Solomon, like there's a whole chapter there where the bridegroom disappears. She can't find him anywhere, and she's abused in the streets, and like it's night and dark, and she can't find her way anymore, and he's vanished. She doesn't know where he is, and she's weeping.
Another story, also a beautiful curve and easily fed into a computer, called Boy Gets Girl, but it needn't be that. Just a way to remember it. Start on an average day, average person, not expecting anything to happen a day like any other. Finds something wonderful, just loves it. Oh, God damn it. Got it back again.
Yeah.
And we all know that there's obviously toxic hope, like the people who stay in abusive relationships too long, right? The people who misplace their hopes in the Führer, right? There are all kinds of toxic versions. So perhaps we could, so I want to talk about all of them, hope, humility, and trust. But what, like, and I know hope is one of the,
but I would say that, again, it's the idea of the proper stance again. That is, what do you place your hope in, right? Because if you place your hope in your spouse completely, then you're going to lose, right? If you place your hope in the government, in your school, in whatever, in your friends, if you put all of it there, then then it's not going to work. And I think that that's why the idea of hoping in God, which sounds like a trite statement, is actually very profound in the proper stance, which is that my hope is turned towards the infinite. It's turned towards that no thing, which is beyond the things. And so, but if I put my hope in this or that leader or this or that, it's going to experience a disappointment, which is important. The disappointment actually, it might be what leads you towards putting your hope in the highest.
Now, these are beautiful curves, and this gets a little complicated. Computers can now play chess, so I don't know why they can't digest this very difficult curve I'm going to draw for you now. And it so happens that this is the most popular story in our civilization, Western civilization. As we love to hear this story, every time it's retold, somebody makes another $1 million. You're welcome to do it. Now, surprisingly enough, I've said it's depressing. You know, people don't like stories about below average days and people. But we're going to start way down here. Worse than that, who is so low? It's a little girl. What's happened? Her mother has died. Her father has remarried a vile-tempered, ugly woman with two nasty daughters, big daughters. You've heard it. Anyway, there's a party at the palace that night. She can't go. She has to help everybody else get ready. She has to stay home. Now, does she sink lower? No. She's a staunch little girl, and she has had the maximum whack from fate, which is the loss of her mother. She can't go any lower than that. Okay, so the fairy godmother comes. Gives her shoes, gives her stocking, gives her mascara. Gives her means of transportation, goes to the party, dances with the prince, has a swell time. Boring, 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 boring. Now there's a slight inclination to that line as I've drawn it because it takes perhaps 20 seconds, 30 seconds for a grandfather clock to strike 12. Does she wind up at the same level? Of course not. She will remember that dance for the rest of her life. Now, she poops along on this level till the prince comes to shoe fits. She achieves off-scale happiness.
You have to read The Golden Key.
Yeah.
I retold it to a couple people after I read it, and I couldn't do it without bawling my eyes out. So there's two characters, Tangle and Mossy. Tangle is a girl, and Mossy is the boy, and he finds the golden key. And he doesn't know what to do with it at first. Well, his first thought before he finds it is, maybe I could sell it because it's golden, right? And I could get some money for it. But then once he finds it, he's gripped by his own curiosity. What's it for? It must unlock something. I gotta find it. Yeah, what does it open? And so he goes on a journey, and then at the same time, Tangle is making her own journey. Okay, and they meet at the grandmother's house, and the grandmother is thousands of years old, and she doesn't look very old. You know, she's beautiful and all this stuff. And she sends them out. She Tangle's there before Mossy gets there with the golden key, and and Tangle loves the grandmother, and they're together and they're living together. And then Mossy shows up, and then the grandmother says, "Oh, you have the golden key. Tangle, you have to go with him." And she's like, "No, I don't want to leave you." And she says, "Yeah, but you'll be safe with him because he has the golden key." And then she tells them, "You'll get to a land." And she goes, "I can't remember the name of it." Which is, it's like, George, of course you know the name of it. Of course she knows. But anyway, and she goes, "You'll lose each other's hand and you won't, and just keep moving forward," is what she says. Right? And so they get to this land of the shadows. So they can see in the sky, they can see horses running across, they can see women with children, they can see all these beautiful images in the sky, and they just yearn for the land where the shadows come from, right? Is what they want. And then they're watching these shadows, and they're holding hands and they're walking together, and then the shadows start to get dark and kind of scary, and they get this uneasy feeling. And at some point, Tangle loses his hand, and she doesn't remember when it happened. That's the really cool part. Okay. She doesn't remember when she lost his hand. So suddenly she realizes she's alone. And this is exactly what you're talking about in Song of Solomon, where she's running through the streets, and and the grandmother tells her, and Mossy, "Don't be afraid. You don't know what happens to Mossy. Like, you don't know how he reacts to having lost Tangle's hand, but you do hear in the story about what happens to Tangle when she realizes that she's lost Mossy's hand, right? And she gets scared and she cries and she does all that, and then she remembers the grandmother's words to just keep moving forward. And yeah, I won't tell the whole story, but
yeah,
that's what it is. And I mean, like, when I read that part, it reminded me of my own marriage, because I've been married for 36 years, right? It's been a journey, and there have been times where we've lost each other's hands, right?
Yeah.
But we just kept going. And of course, I can't tell you the end because you have to read the story, but this is, I'm like, oh man, this is just like a marriage. And then I went, oh yeah, of course it is, because so is everything.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So is everything. This is what God calls it. The marriage supper of the Lamb, right?
Yeah.
And that's why it's so intimate and so moving and so complementary. Like, when you talk about God filling up the negative space, that is the union of a man and a woman, right?
Yeah.
It is what it's indicative of. That's what it's symbolic of.
Yeah.
Both of those things are symbolic of each other.
Right.
We don't have to talk about this now. Maybe we can talk about this next time. But I did listen to a little bit of the Q&A from John Vervaeke, and the first question was about, they talked about beauty and the fact that beauty contains all the things, right? All the strong feelings. Like, it's not just something that's pleasing to you, is what John Vervaeke says.
Yeah.
Right?
That's that.
And when I heard that, I thought right away of God's speech, because and I don't want to give it away, but we should talk about that some more, because I liked, and I got this from you, I like to talk about Job as the more beautiful story. And it became clear to me when I listened to the Q&A today why we choose to call it beautiful. Nobody would call Job beautiful. I've never heard it described that way. It's a terribly difficult book, right? And it's all about, suffering and patience.
Yeah, I have so many people that tell me they're like, I can't make it through the first couple chapters. They just can't. You're just like, I get it. Yeah. But this is
This is the advice that the grandmother gives to Mossy and Tangle.
Just keep going.
Just keep going. Right.
Just keep going.
Mm-hmm.
You just have to keep going. You don't have to get orientation. You don't have to like try to seek wisdom. You don't have to like you just
keep going.
moving. And then it's like, I mean, it's in those moments like when you're truly in like God's hand, like that's when you're trusting him, because you have no idea.
No.
But and you're constantly doubting yourself, like, am I moving the right direction? Am I just keep going? Just keep going.
Yeah.
You know, it has nothing to do with you or your capabilities at this moment. And those are those times when God shows you, you know, your place. He shows you who you are. He shows the wider world to you.
There's a beautiful...
Everything's opened up. Everything opens up.
There's a beautiful description. So Tangle ends up, she meets the old man of the sea, the old man of the earth, and then the old man of the fire, which is in the center of the earth. Okay. And the old man of the earth, each one of them shows her the way to the other. Okay. There's a scene where the old man of the earth says to her, this is the way to the old man of the fire. And he opens this stone door on the floor, and there's a river running. And this gust of hot air comes out, right? Like stiflingly hot. And she's like, whoa. And it's under the earth. Okay. Like it's not flowing on top of anything.
In the sunshine.
No, it's like
trees.
This rushing river, right? And she stands there, and it seems like I love how George MacDonald does it. It seems like she's staring at it for 7 hours, but it's been 7 years.
7 years.
And she's staring at it. And the old man of the earth is just holding the door open, waiting for her. And then all of a sudden she just dives in headlong.